Namaskar. Welcome to our new program, Kutfo, Cultural Talks. It is a cultural magazine where we will have important stories, videos, interviews related with the cultural ties between India and Hungary. India and Hungary have enjoyed a very deep and long-standing cultural relationship from the time of the first Hungarian György Huszti, who visited India in 1538. The Hungarian cultural contact with India dates back to the 15th century, when Panchatantra story was first mentioned in Monk Albert's Temeswari's work. Gradually, we find studies done on Sanskrit and other Indo-European languages, followed by the memorable work of Indologist Alexander Csoma de Körös in the 18th century, who can be called the founding father of Tibetan and Buddhist studies in Hungary. The spiritual connect of India and Hungary has also been strong. From 18th century onwards, scholars have been exploring ancient Indian scriptures and philosophy. Today, we have several organizations and spiritual masters in Hungary who are promoting deep philosophy of ancient India. I welcome today Sivarama Swami, the leader of ISKCON in Hungary. Let us go with the beginning of the Hindu teachings and understanding the position of this philosophy in Hungary. And like study the Vedas, it's a rare things, and except few scholars, not so many people are getting deeply interested in this subject or have a real understanding about it. However, I feel that Indian scriptures has relevance in our life very much. So can you share your ideas about it?
Yes, Hare Krishna, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. You know, the teachings of the Vedas, which are the actual literary tradition of India, in fact, they're the basic knowledge upon which Indian culture is originally built, has at its core spiritual values. And from that initial core, from that initial spiritual principle, then other things such as Ayurveda and Horveda, which is horoscope, and so many other type of secular sciences are there. But the purpose of all of it is enlightenment, self-realization. In other words, the purpose of life, whether it's in India or it's in Hungary or any other part of the world, for human beings is to pursue the real meaning of life. Who are we? To understand our original spiritual nature. And as in times gone by, humanity tends to slip off the track. And while there may be many details of how that happens, but the principle is that humanity loses its spiritual identity and focuses on the temporal, focuses on the material. And basically focusing on the material means that I focus on this body. I am this body. And the purpose of life is to somehow or another satisfy this body. Things that I eat, things that I see, to satisfy the senses, rather than actually satisfying the quest of the soul for connection with the Supreme, for connecting with our original source and living in the world. Yes, of course, everyone has to live in the world, but that's as a means to facilitate this end. It is not the be-all and end-all of life. It's not the purpose of life. So it begins by this understanding, and it's a very relevant and very simple principle, is to be able to distinguish between matter and spirit, and to be able to identify ourselves with the spirit, and to disassociate ourselves from the matter and see that matter, especially in the form of this body, is actually just an instrument. It's an instrument that's meant to help us live and eat and house ourselves and take care of our bodies, but it's only a facility. So there's a lot of theology, there's a lot of philosophy, there's a lot of ritual behind that, but the ultimate purpose is, as for instance in Vedanta Sutra says, Atato Brahma Jignasa. Now, in this human form of life, now is the time to inquire about who we are.
Can you tell anything about our viewers to understand the concepts, and also the important, for example, the Vedic type of lifestyle?
If education is there, we live in the world today where more people have access to education that even at one time in the past was just restricted to royalty or aristocracy. Now anyone can actually get educated, and we know a lot more than aristocracy did 100, 200, 300 years ago. So the question is, what is the purpose of education? And education can't simply be just in order to fulfill the needs of the body. Education also needs to be to fulfill the needs of the soul. And of course, that education is missing. For that purpose, here in Budapest, we have our college. We have our Bhaktivedanta College, which is a state-recognized college. It's an EU-accredited college, and we're going to be university with the purpose of actually providing that type of education, which is very sorely missing. Traditionally in the past, education was connected, whether it was in the churches, but priests would teach, and they would also be teaching the spiritual knowledge along with the basics that you need to live. So, and it's not a difficult concept. We're not talking about becoming philosophers, but we're talking about being human beings.
Yeah,
and a human being has to know who he is. When you don't know who you are, then you're walking blind in the world. Healthy living is also connected to spirituality, because ultimately how to live comes from the Creator. And when you start living in a different way, then you become unhealthy.
Hungarian people more or less nowadays have already familiar with the Krishna Valley. So you have created such a nice, we can say it is an education system already.
Yes.
It's not just a place, you know, for living for bhaktas, but I think the Gokula is itself a kind of educational place in this world. So can you just tell something about it, like the meaning of the Gokula and how it is connected to Krishna and his teachings?
You know, all of our centers, whether it's in Budapest or Debrecen or Krishna Valley, are all educational institutions. We're not just making facilities for some followers, but it's actually for everybody. It's for all of our guests who come. And in Krishna Valley, we have about 25,000 guests coming annually. And our purpose is to remind them of actually how everybody in Hungary used to live. And when they come, they say, wow, this is so great. Yes, this is the way my mother lived. This is the way my grandparents live. I used to live like that when I was young. In other words, they used to live very much in harmony with nature. And there was a direct connection between them and the land. And this is the principle of Gokul. The word Gokul in Sanskrit means actually a pasture ground. So in Indian culture, the whole concept of agriculture and feeding ourselves is based around the cows and the bull. And Krishna is very much connected to both cow protection and also the protection of the bull. The cow gives milk, and from milk we get all kinds of milk products, and that becomes the staple for the food that we eat. And the bull provides the ox power that we need. So those two things then become the real solution to the agricultural problem. And that type of life is something that Krishna himself 5,000 years ago showed. And Krishna Valley is also showing not only a place of pilgrimage, a spiritual place, but this is actually the formula which the Creator has given. This is the way God lives, and this is the way humans are meant to live. We have a very simple motto that my spiritual master, the founder of the Krishna consciousness movement, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami gave: simple living, high thinking. Keep life simple, because life was simple, especially before the Industrial Revolution, but even before the technological revolution, life was relatively simple. And when life is simple, then you have time for spiritual thoughts. Otherwise, the more we get into this catch-22 situation, verdekör, as we call it in Hungarian, then the less and less time that we have to pursue our real spiritual calling. And the example of how to live is actually described in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is next to the Bhagavad Gita, our most important part of the Vedas. And there it is a historical narration of how Krishna himself lived in the very same way. The best formula for wedding both sustainability, maintaining ourselves, and also self-realization, keeping the right balance for the two things. You know, balance is like this. If everything has its right measure, then you're okay. As soon as there's too much here, then there's not enough on this side. So Krishna Valley is meant to show that right balance. I think that gives an idea of what Gokul is about. And we're trying to stay in traditional values. In Hungary, for instance, in the years past, it was the horse that was the basis of energy and not the oxen. But the principle was still the same. And that was that we stayed away from, there was no machinery, there were no internal combustion engines, no tractors, no other things, and therefore there was also no unemployment.
It sounds really great because the sustainability is such an important question today. I mean, it's a global question today. And many people, when they are thinking about the ISKCON movement, they are thinking it's all about like some religious teaching, but I guess it's very, very practical also in day-to-day life, what a tradition can offer. And this sustainable way of living is one example for that. And when you mentioned this simple life, I got some idea about this Gokula, also nice expression when we are thinking on the Kula means like family, and when we feel that this cow is the part of my family, I mean, it is also a living being, and I feel compassion, and I'm practicing the non-violent attitude, the ahimsa. And might be many people knows that ISKCON Bhaktas are vegetarians, so they are following this kind of eating habits just because of the compassionate attitude towards the sentient beings. So can we just say something about it, more about like Bhakti tradition, how you promote this kind of attitudes?
You know, sustainability has really become a catchword nowadays, and it's certainly a very important thing. There's unfortunately a phrase called sustainable growth, which is an impractical thing because growth isn't something that's unlimited, and you can't have unlimited sustainable growth. So sustainability really means you live according to your resources. What is it that you have? And, you know, we have a relatively small planet, and that small planet has certain resources. So how can our 7 billion plus people live on this planet in a way that everyone has what they need rather than everyone has what they want? Because when you get into this philosophy of getting what you want, then you get into competition, and people who are stronger than other people, they get more, which means that these other people automatically are going to get less. And sustainability, as you pointed out, doesn't just refer to humans. We're not living here alone. We live with others. And what is the role of all species of life? What is the role of the cows? What is the role of the bull? We didn't dream this idea up that we should be dependent on the cows. This is the creator's idea. This is how the world was created. And an aspect of sustainability is nonviolence. So ahimsa sarva bhutani, this concept of living with minimum violence in this world, that means that not only should humans be friendly with each other, but we should actually respect the life of other living entities, such as animals, bulls, cows, and minimum nonviolence means that vegetables also have life. But a certain degree of, you cannot live without one life depending on another. But there's a real difference between the developed forms of life and the more basic forms of life. So ultimately, it is what God has actually allotted for us to eat. And when we live according to those laws, then life becomes sustainable. So we have, our farm is, say, about 300 hectares, which is about 700 acres. And we have gardening, we have our orchards, our fruit orchards, we have pasture land, and we work the land in a way that's sustainable. In other words, we don't take more out of the land, and we rotate land according to the ability of land to function and according to the crops that are favorable, and ultimately to be able to feed ourselves, because everyone should be able to feed themselves. It wasn't so long ago that people would just live out of their gardens. It's not such a revolutionary idea. Everyone in the world was doing this some time back. It's become revolution now because, pretty soon 70% of people are going to be living in the world are going to be living in cities and working in cities, and they're no longer going to be on the land. Previously, as I mentioned, when people are working in the garden, you stay fit and healthy. When you're sitting all day in an office, or now you're sitting at home in your chair and working from home, that's not the most healthiest atmosphere. So we have to compensate. And yoga is actually the most natural and the best form of exercise. It is called sattvic exercise, or it's exercise in the mode of goodness. You don't have to be running around your room to do it. You can just do it with different asanas. You can do it with different breathing techniques. And it's something that's really, really caught on like a wildfire over the last 20 years around the world, as you know. And Prime Minister Modi is a person who really promotes practice of yoga. So that's the other subject that our college teaches. We actually teach yoga instructors, and we give a 3-year accredited diploma in actually yoga instruction, so that people can learn this balance. We're in the situation that we're in, but learn also how to have a healthier life and how to stay healthy where you are. Eat healthy, exercise healthy, think healthy.
Last but not least, can you just tell some other programs, how you promote the Indian culture throughout your programs, events and activities? You organize many programs regarding even food festivals and many things regarding Indian culture, traditions.
Yes, Indian culture means Indians' spiritual culture, and actually all culture originally has a spiritual foundation. And it's a very, very rich culture. So dance, architecture, and art, music. So, our whole meditation, our chanting, mantra chanting, the Hare Krishna mantra, which is sort of the basis by which we recommend that people bring about a peaceful state of consciousness in their lives, is backed by music. And it's backed by the type of music that they play in India: kartals, mridanga, harmonium. You can see a harmonium in the background. Similarly, dance. Of course, we're always dancing along with the kirtan, but then there's Bharatnatyam, Odissi dancing, and so on, which all expresses the culture and the teachings of great poets such as Jayadev and so on. And then food. Our cooking. We have our restaurants, and we have restaurants throughout Hungary. And the purpose of those restaurants is to show the wonderful alternative that Indian vegetarian cooking offers. And ultimately, everyone eats. No one argues with things that taste nice. And my opinion is that Indian cooking is the best. And it also originates way, way back with the way Krishna would also eat.
And
So
we can get the connection. If you mention the food and the cooking as an example, then it comes back to as a link to the Ayurveda, and also it comes back to the topic of, like, for example, the karma yoga, because many people think about yoga only about asanas and pranayama, but might be ISKCON can really put light on the other 4 parts of yoga. I mean, all 4 parts of yoga. And karma yoga is also one aspect when you are serving people, and by doing it, by cooking for others, it also kind of just expressing our humble attitude to serve people.
yeah, yoga means, the greater meaning of yoga means to connect with the Supreme. So you connect through your work, you connect through knowledge, jnana yoga, you connect through your activities, as you mentioned, is karma yoga. You connect through spiritual activities or devotion, is bhakti yoga. And all of these really comprise life and our way of living. So it's not just something that you do, as you point out. It's not just a matter of doing 15, 20 minutes of asanas a day. It's about life. Yoga is how you live. So what is that lifestyle that is most conducive towards being happy? Be happy materially and be happy spiritually, both. Not a choice between the two, but have both. And Indian culture actually shows, it gives that alternative. And it unfortunately becomes an alternative in today's world where people can have both. But they have to learn how to be self-controlled, and that's the basis of yoga, which means you have to be satisfied with what you need rather than all the things that we want. And if we can live like that, then not only us, but the whole world. Sarva Sukhino Bhavantu. This is the motto, Indian motto. Let everyone in the world be happy.
Happy, that's all. And last but not least, you also mentioned this attitude, this quality called santosha. So we have to get this kind of satisfied attitude, whatever we got, we could be happy with that. And this is the basic for the happy and simple life as well. So finally, may I ask to give some suggestion for people today in this uncertain situation regarding this pandemic? So can you just suggest any simple practice for people for how to see the future?
Yes, I would suggest that people incorporate in the beginning of their day a very simple sadhana, which is spiritual practice, that when you rise in the morning, then read from the Bhagavad Gita. Get a Bhagavad Gita, which is really India's Bible. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there's only 700 verses. The whole science of life is described. And use the verses that are there as simple daily meditations. And then, in addition to that, practice mantra meditation. Chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. If you can add a little meditation or breath restraint and asanas, then that's also good to stay limber. And this can be 15 minutes. We do it 4 hours every morning. This dedicated quality time will actually give a real foundation for the day, for how we feel, and for also how we think. It gives a new approach to practicing and living in the world.
So thank you to share your insight on these points, and I wish you very happy and long life.
Thank you very much. Take care of yourself in our sort of risky world. Hare Krishna. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Krishna devotees first appeared in Hungary at the end of the 1970s, and today form an important role in the spiritual persona of Hungary. We will come back with a new story, a new personality in our next episode. Do write to us and share your views. Till then, namaste.
Hare Krishna.